Welcome to Mixtape Videos and another underrated, overrated video. In this video, we'll look at two more NBA players that are either underrated or overrated by fans and the sports media. In the last video, we took a look at Jerry West and Oscar Robertson. Who will it be this time? Let's find out. Underrated, Karl Malone. This is a case of never winning a championship equals getting moved down the ladder of legends a few too many notches. Yes, Duncan, Dirk, and Garnett have all won a title. Duncan has won 5 and has 3 Finals MVPs along the way. Believe it or not though, Malone was a better scorer, both in the regular season and the playoffs, and pulled down more total rebounds than Duncan. We're not saying that Karl Malone is better than Duncan, but Malone is closer to the top than most people will say.
Karl often felt a need to be recognized. He did the things that he needed to do to be recognized, but playing in a small market like Salt Lake, I think he felt like he always wasn't on the receiving end of what he should have been.
Despite playing until he was 40 years old, Malone has career averages of 25 points and 10.5 rebounds, while shooting 51.6%. And that's including his rookie season and his last injury-plagued season at age 40. Though he was primarily known for his lethal offensive game, Malone is 6th all-time in total rebounds and number 1 in total defensive rebounds. Adding more to his defensive resume, he's 10th all-time in total steals as a power forward. But let's go back to his offense for a minute. Karl Malone is number 13 all-time in points per game for the regular season and number 15 all-time in the playoffs. In fact, 3 times he was beat out as the scoring champ by none other than Michael Jordan. And probably most impressive, he's number 2 on the all-time scoring list.
He became a very good passer. He could hit the outside shot. He picked up a little bit of a hook shot moving across the lane. It seemed he would come back every year and have one more weapon in his arsenal.
Malone benefited from playing with John Stockton, one of the greatest point guards of all time, and had a simple offensive game that consisted of a face-up jumper and basically bullying his defender out of the way. It wasn't always pretty, but it worked.
Stockton and Malone ran the pick and roll better than any two people who've ever played the game.
It was a little ballet show going on out there, but with power and grace.
Stockton to Malone, my goodness, I'll have a headache for a month.
At 6'9", you could say Malone was undersized for his position, but you would never know it by the way he played. He was a beast physically, but could move around like a guard. Imagine LeBron on steroids. That's Malone. As someone put it, Malone put the power in power forward. Malone is number 3 all-time in total win shares for the regular season and even beat Jordan out of the MVP award in the 96-97 season. He won regular season MVP a second time in 1999, making him one of only 9 players to win MVP more than once.
Nobody came through as consistently and as often in big NBA games in that era as Jordan did. So it's not necessarily a disgrace to be the runner-up to him.
All in all, Karl Malone is one of the greatest power forwards ever. If Duncan is first, does that make Malone second? Well, there may be another power forward that beats him, but that's for another video. Regardless, Malone may be known as a great, but he hardly gets the respect he deserves. Overrated, Kevin Garnett. In some circles, it's almost considered a no-brainer to put Garnett in the company of Tim Duncan, Dirk Nowitzki, Bob Pettit, Elvin Hayes, and yes, Karl Malone, even above them. But let's look at the facts. We'll start with a few obvious categories like PER, win shares, and points per game, both in the regular season and the playoffs. When talking about the greats, those are some pretty definitive categories. In those 3 categories, for the regular season and the playoffs, Garnett is top 20 and only 1. The most common compliment that's paid to Garnett is that he's a leader and plays with ultimate passion. Well, that's great, but it's not enough to put him above everyone else.
He radiates such intensity that it is impossible for it not to wear off on the other players.
He may have led his team emotionally, but he didn't lead them to very much in a tangible sense, like a deep playoff run. After 12 years and 8 playoff appearances with Minnesota, his team made it out of the first round just once.
So now Minnesota, the only team to be eliminated in the first round, 6 consecutive seasons.
It did get old. It got old to cover because you knew that after the elimination game, we would wait and Kevin would trudge up to the front table and he would, be basically crushed, just frustrated as heck that he hadn't advanced, and it was starting to become a bit of a burden on his reputation.
He didn't win a championship until he teamed up with Paul Pierce and Ray Allen, both of which had averaged over 25 points a game in previous seasons. That's worse than LeBron's teaming up with Bosh and Wade, and at least LeBron won Finals MVP.
He never gave any sense that after 3 years he was going to move on to a bigger market. He was a guy who said, no, I'm going to make it work here. These guys drafted me, these guys believed in me, and I'm not going anywhere.
Now, you may be yelling at your computer screen, Garnett was the defensive stopper, that's why he's second to Duncan. Okay, so let's zero in on the defensive categories. In defensive rating, he's 19th all-time. Total blocks, number 18 all-time. Rebounds per game, number 36 all-time. Blocks per game, number 53 all-time. He was top 10 in blocks per game for a season only one time in his career. Just about the only categories he's top 10 in are defensive win shares and total rebounds. Garnett's passion for the game has led to several achievements like regular season MVP and Defensive Player of the Year, not to mention some monster games. However, his greatest achievement and most notable years came as a role player, not a leader. So those are the 2 players for this video. Subscribe to see who we pick next as the most underrated or overrated players. Have someone in mind? Leave a comment letting us know who you think is underrated or overrated.